So Trag'Oul is back. Trag'Oul's Blood Nova push build, including the Iron Rose, the Funerary Pick, all the new items, Guardian set. So the Too Long Didn't Watch version of this build guide is I'm offering you a build that has a lot more utility, a lot more quality of life for not only keeping your simulacrums alive longer. So if you're having that problem, the mechanics that I go over here and the choices I've made with this build might help you in that regard, but also helps the progression as you are lower Paragon and go into a higher Paragon setup. Utilizing the Guardians aversion set is actually a big help just because of how the Trag'Oul set interacts with main stat and vitality and all that, right? So the Leech Curse as well helps keep not only yourself alive, but also helps your simulacrums out. All of these things combined, the Invigorating Gemstone as well, are going to make for a super smooth setup that doesn't really have to bother with a lot of getting knocked around or anything, and just can clear very high with there's very little barrier to entry for this build, but there's a lot of little optimizations as you continue to play with it that you can make to improve your clear speed and your playstyle, and that's what I love about it. So an update for this guide, I kind of missed that area damage has been changed with the revised Iron Rose. Simulacrum cast novas from the Iron Rose can proc area damage now, and this is the largest factor that's going to incentivize us to use area damage in the build. Throughout the rest of the build video, I might not have updated this, so when I scroll over the different items, you might see vitality or, armor on this, or average damage range on the ring, for example. Just know that those have changed, and the D3 planner that's linked in the description will have the updated affixes. Hi, Futurecratic jumping in to let you know that the Guardians 2-piece has swapped with the 3-piece, so throughout this video I might talk about the Guardians 2-piece. Know that that is now on the 3-piece. This also means that the build composition has changed to where we need the reroll grandeur in the setup. So we're going back to not being able to use the Stone of Jordan or the Squirt's Necklace in this composition, but rather running the Mantle of Channeling Warren. And then we have our choice of any one of 3 defensive items: the Dainty's Binding, the Stone Gauntlets, or the Aquila. And all 3 present or give you about the same amount of toughness with this build. It's just a matter of what you want to deal with in terms of uptime. If you want to maintain a curse on an enemy, there's that. If you want to make sure that you're getting hit by enemies to keep up your bonus, the Stone Gauntlets might be of benefit. Stone Gauntlets might also be beneficial for your simulacrums because you can snapshot them with the simulacrums and increase their toughness as well. And then we have the Aquila, which is also great for maintaining this bonus as long as you don't spam your Leech Curse. Not quite my preference, because I do like to spam my Leech Curse quite a lot, but these are all great options for extra toughness in this configuration, and it's going to be a good one for those low to mid Paragon levels. Even still, with losing this extra utility, I was really just hoping that we would kind of have that cherry on top to make it more competitive at the top end, prolong its life before you have to swap into Aughild's. Would have been such a joy to have, but alas, this is not to be. Anyways, thank you, and hope you enjoy. So after D3 Planner updated, we have a better estimate defensively of how we need to balance affixes with the Guardians 2-piece. And something I missed when I originally made this guide is I was placing amethysts in pads and chests because I was assuming those, being buffed would be better. However, rubies and emeralds are getting increased by the Guardian's 2-piece as well. So you can gain 560 per gem armor, which is quite nice for balancing toughness. So we swapped from amethysts to rubies here, and I did opt to keep vitality on the chest piece, not putting an armor affix there is better because, again, the Guardian's increasing these main stats, not plus armor on your gear. So vitality is still a better pick for most of the Guardian builds in this scenario. Notably, if you look at the Aughild setup though, I have done the opposite. I've placed the armor on the chest piece and kept the amethysts in gear for that increased vitality because we don't have as much with these variations. Additionally, I've added a higher Paragon composition here with the Zeistone of Vengeance and the Decrepify. I mentioned later in the guide how beneficial Decrepify can be, allowing you to benefit from trapped at range while still getting an extra multiplier via Zeistone of Vengeance. You need a lot of control impairing effect reduction rolls. 2 to 3 would be optimal with this setup, but it is an option at really high paragons that you can opt for. The Guardian's Jeopardy set here, having an increased benefit, has pushed out the break even for this composition. If you're looking just offensively, that break even is going to be about 1700 to 1800 paragon, but with this particular build we're also including the defensive side because this is definitely helping us push higher and higher. And if you include all of those defensive bonuses, including the benefit that the SOJ gives you over other options here, it's about 3100 paragon. Without the SOJ bonus, somewhere in the range of 2900. So to have a better estimate, I would actually go between these two, between the offensive and the defensive somewhere. So somewhere in the range of 2500 paragon is a good guess at when you should probably be swapping in, but I will leave that up to you. Further analysis on this break even later in the video. Additionally, for those pesky area damage affixes, I prefer a balance of area damage with this setup, at least for the mid-level paragons around 2000, 1500, 2000 paragon. Definitely going for like a 110% area damage with the shoulder piece, 1 ring roll, and the offhand here is going to be quite nice. Keeping that attack speed roll on the weapon because you don't have to max it out. This mid paragon build is definitely a balanced setup in that we have a nice level of area damage, huge level of toughness. See, we have vitality rolls on the helm, the offhand, and the gloves here coming in to help us out with that, but we still have that additive damage standard via the spreading malediction and the Trag'Oul's boots that are going to help us out. So it's not like we're skimping entirely in that area either. Lower paragons, you're going to have even less area damage, just making it easier to get better rings in general. Say if you're using the stone gauntlets, you might have int on your ring instead of area damage here, for example. For higher paragons, as mentioned, you're definitely going to want to max out the capability for slotting area damage. So what we're doing here is we're rolling quad glove with attack speed on that slot, and we also have the Crispin sentence, and this will still allow us to hit that attack speed breakpoint and place additional area damage on our weapon. So we get additional 4% plus an extra roll gives us a total of 154 for these high paragons. So I've gone over the build, but haven't really touched on those Angelic Crucibles, this rare resource we're going to use to sanctify items. What item should we sanctify? For those mid to high paragons, I'm going to favor the Iron Rose. This has a large variable range between 400 and 500% multiplier that I think will just be nice to max out. Additionally, some of the affixes on the offhand are the most difficult to get perfected, so being able to reroll technically a primal with this resource can be quite nice to just get that perfected offhand and not have to worry about it as much. That being said, the Funerary Pick does have a significantly large multiplier, especially when you're looking at low target count, single target engagements, this can be a very advantageous weapon, especially at lower paragons when your weapon is not likely to be ancient or perfected. This can be very nice. One thing about the Funerary Pick, though, is it rolls int vite standard, which can make it very difficult to roll perfected affixes. However, at these lower paragons, that's exactly what we want. So it just makes a better fit at this stage in the progression, and I think it's quite a nice pick. Newly revised mechanics for the Trag'Oul set. We now get the Siphon Blood, all of the runes there, so that is going to increase our healing, give us the Power Shift rune by default, which is useful since we are going to use the Funerary Pick, which is also a revised item in this build. Life spending ability is no longer cost essence. Quite a nice quality of life here. It means you can run the Aughild bonus a little bit easier. Yeah, we have while at full life, added to maximum life for the 2-piece up to 300% more. Quite a nice increase to toughness, but not only that, it synergizes very well with the healing mechanics of this build. The Leech Curse, it synergizes very well with the Guardian set, increasing our vitality, right? So a lot of good things going on with the 4-piece here. Now, we also have the 6-piece ramped up to 10,000, still maintains the increased healing, which is good to note as well. The Iron Rose is 50% per stack on that new multiplier, so a 6x bonus there. Very nice indeed. You still have to maintain these stacks. Even though they last 60 seconds, this can be a concern when you're clicking shield pylons, channeling pylons. You definitely have to still pay attention to that. For the Funerary Pick, it is going to give us a multiplier against the targets that we are siphoning from, so up to 3 targets, and that's a 4x multiplier. But if there's only one target affected, then it gains double the increased multiplier here, which is quite nice. Power Shift is increased to 20% per stack. They're 10 stacks, so this is another 3x multiplier. Blood-type Blade now has a limitation of 25 enemies. This will not affect the power for clear of this build, because typically you're going to kill the trash mobs that are pulled in and included in this amount anyway, before it even matters. You're just basically keeping the trash alive longer while you're making a big pull. For the Necromancer's Sanctified Power, we have the Spirit Nova projectiles. They are procced from your adds as well, your Simulacrums. So it's still a 60% DPS increase against single target, but this is inconsequential. It's minuscule compared to the multiplier increase that you can achieve with density. So as you'll see later, I'll give some examples of what is a good engagement in terms of helping you kill a Rift Guardian on this build. There are a lot of interesting mechanics. It's a very fun build to play. It's more position-based than action-based, or focusing on a ranged attack or precisely hitting something. It's definitely more focused on pulling correctly and getting mobs in position and getting yourself in position for optimal novas spam, and actually surviving. It is actually a big part of the gameplay here. It's going to be a combination of toughness and healing, with more of an emphasis on healing in this build. So the Drain Life rune will restore 6% health, but you have to remember we're using the Funerary Pick, which tags 3 targets, so that's 18%, but we have to multiply that by 2 because the Trag'Oul gives us double healing. So it's 36% health per tick, and while our FPA for Iron Rose procs is going to be 20 FPA, the tick rate of Siphon Blood is actually faster than this. There's an 18 frame ICD that is in place preventing the Iron Rose from proccing every time that Siphon Blood ticks. So you're actually ticking Siphon Blood at the desired breakpoint once every 10 frames, so 6 times a second. So you take this 36% value and you multiply it by 6, and that's what you're healing per second. with the siphon blood alone. Now, in my opinion, this is not enough, and this is why I've included the Leech Curse for even more returns based on when your blood novas, both your own blood nova generated from the Iron Rose proc and your Simulacrum blood novas generated from the Iron Rose procs hit a target, will also restore health to you during the channel. And because there's a delay between when your Iron Rose proc occurs and when your Simulacrums have procced their novas, this creates more consistent returns in life. Your DPS is going to increase considerably with this build if you are standing on top of density and basically continually attacking and continually engaging in the same location. So the longer we can stay in one place, the more damage we will deal in the end. Alright, continuing along, suffice it to say that we will have very high vitality, high life percent to benefit both us and our Simulacrums. I'll also get into that in a little bit. Recall that our 4-piece will be increasing our life pool by 300%. So you can imagine the health pool in the greater rift that I was in. So boosting vitality via life percent and even throwing a few Paragon points into vitality isn't such a bad choice to make. Now, we do have other things that are keeping us tip-top on the health. We're actually using the Invigorating Gemstone, and the crowd control immunity is awesome, by the way. When you're pulling in all of these elites, you are going to get besieged with vortex. You're going to get frozen, you're going to get feared, all these different things. The only thing it doesn't help you with is Wormhole. So Wormhole is very annoying with this build because the immunity doesn't work with it. But every other thing you can basically almost ignore or just dodge if you were taking too much damage. But aside from that, the ability to spam without getting interrupted. Part of this bonus is the healing. The up to 40% healing that you can get, which is very easy to stack up to 40% because of the tick rate on our ability. We keep it consistently at that level, right? Whether you should use Frailty, whether you should use Decrepify or Leech. My preference is the Leech, again, because we are standing in the middle of like 5-6 elite packs in an optimal scenario and sort of targeting down the elites with the Funerary Pick. I have preferred the Leech Curse, and if you haven't seen my old 269 Leech Mechanics video, I'll give you a brief summary of the mechanics that are going to be useful to us. Is it says 2% cursed enemies heal the attacker, but it's actually significantly more than this that's going to be returned from your Simulacrums hitting the enemy, and they're going to, I think what I estimated was that the returns were based on the Simulacrum health, so the health returns to the player's character based on the Simulacrum's health. This is also why it's hugely beneficial to keep your Simulacrums healthy, not only keeping the Simulacrums alive, but increasing the health returned from the Leech Curse to your own character. But you also have to consider this build, we're engaging density, not just one target that is cursed with Leech, that your attacks and the Simulacrum's attacks are returning health to you for. With the Leech target, it's multiple. It's like a whole screen full of leeched enemies that are just constantly returning your health, and they'll be dealing a ton of damage to you. As long as none of those attacks will one-shot you, you will stay alive and be able to recover the health quick enough to go back to full life. And you see the when you look at the clear video, you'll see my health bar. It goes down to like sometimes 20%, and then it shoots back up to full, because that's just how quickly the health regen is with the Leech Curse. Can't emphasize that that enough. Now the runes on the Leech Curse aren't that great. The only one you can't use is Curse Ground because it has a different mechanic, but between Sanguinin, Blood Flask, Osmosis, and Transmittable, you can make a choice. I chose Transmittable because it's the only thing that gives us any value. Basically, when the little trash mobs that are cursed are dying, they hopefully will spread the curse, and you won't have to manually use your curse and interrupt your DPS cycle as often is the hope. As far as alternate curses you could look into, Frailty is a more offensive choice. Crippling Curse kills enemies with less than 15% health. Very good for letting you achieve those higher, greater rifts offensively, but I believe that a defensive approach for this particular setup is going to be superior. That's why I've chosen the Leech Curse. However, Decrepify as an alternate option is really darn good because it will allow you to get full coverage of your Bane of the Trapped. Remember that your Bane of the Trapped is only 15 yards, and your attacks are from your Death Nova are 25 radius, and then your Simulacrum, Death Novas, those are 20, and they're standing about 5 yards away from you. They're, you know, a little bit set apart on either side, which is why the 15-yard radius most of the time covers your main area of where you want to be focusing your DPS, because you want that overlap of the circles to occur, and that's where you're focusing your damage. So in the end, it's not such a requirement that you slow your enemies outside this area on the edge, but it definitely helps deal DPS. And you know, either way, whether you're keeping enemies alive for a little bit longer and opting for Leech, or whether you're opting for Decrepify to ensure coverage of your Bane of the Trapped, both are good. Now there's also the benefit here with Decrepify. It reduces damage of affected enemies. This not only keeps you alive longer, but because this is a debuff, it keeps your Simulacrums alive a little longer as well. Other slows include the Suppress rune that we get from the Siphon Blood ability, and then we also have a stun Bone Armor, 30-yard radius on Bone Armor. So that would definitely encompass all of your attacks during your most important DPS cycle. This is another reason why I feel a little bit comfortable running Leech over having Decrepify for more Bane of the Trapped coverage, is that I know that enemies will get stunned, and that will be most important for the Convention of Elements, Chrisman Sentence, Bane of the Trapped combination. So what's the general gameplay cycle? At the beginning of the Rift, you're going to be very weak, so you're going to want to cast your abilities to proc your 6-piece Trag'Oul and get that up and running as soon as possible. Remember, you have to heal over your maximum HP to proc it and get it increased. So using your Blood Rush, remember we get all the runes, and one of those is Transfusion, which heals you per enemy that you pass through. So this is a really quick and easy way to get some stacks up on the set. Just dash through enemies. You're also going to want to get your Bone Armor active and running as quick as possible. So that gives 30% damage reduction and won't be active at the beginning of the Rift. After the beginning of the Rift, you're just going to be trying to pull enemies while you're not on. When physical ends, you start pulling immediately. Just try and pull more trash into your pull area, or elites, whatever you can find. And there are two methods you could use while you're going through maps. We don't have a lot of movement speed in this build, but you could choose to either just burst down the trash and go, and this is the scenario where the elites that you've engaged for whatever reason, you've run into a juggernaut, or the elite affixes are very nasty, or for whatever reason you don't like that elite because the mob types aren't following you very well. There's got to be some reason for you to skip them. These are the scenarios where you just focus on trash. There's also a scenario where, because of the Funerary Pick now, we have the ability to focus down elites, and blues or yellows, you can engage both types. but remembering with the Blood-Tide Blade, we do benefit from extra density. But this is going to make it very difficult, because if you're pulling together multiple elite packs, a lot of trash, all together in one giant pull, it can be very difficult to... You remember the days of Corpse Lance and Bone Lance when we were lancing, and you would have one rotation and you put your cursor over that little wasp or bee and it would just go to the trash mob that was right next to it for whatever reason. It's the same thing here, but it's less punishing because we're not in a DPS rotation. Well, I guess we are with the convention of elements, but we're not waiting for 2 minutes for our cooldown to come back up in comparison to those lance builds. But it is very important on that ultimate push for you to target the correct enemies with your Funerary Pick. And not only that, pay attention to where your spirit ghost procs are heading towards, because if they're procking on an enemy that is not affected by your Funerary Pick, I know it's random, but it can affect. You might want to think about just repositioning and seeing if the spirit ghost procs will line up with your Funerary Picked enemies. You're going to want to pay attention to your COE, of course. When it comes around to the end of halfway through cold, Blood Rush in. This will proc your potency rune, which will keep you safe for a few seconds. So right before your physical cycle, your DPS cycle, you'll activate the dislocation, you'll stun enemies, you'll deal massive damage, depending on what's in the area, and you're also stacking Stricken on occasion on top of the Siphon Blood effect. So you do have to keep this in mind. It is a slow Stricken stacker, Siphon Blood is, but it does help out for elites and the Rift Guardian especially. It's going to be very difficult with this build. You're typically going to be at your highest push clearing the Rift in possibly 7 to 10 minutes, but our Rift Guardian is going to take anywhere from 2.5 to 7 minutes to clear that RG, especially if it's just a single target Rift Guardian that you have to DPS down and they don't spawn any ads. It will take a long time. You will be holding down the channel button for a long time. You're going to want a Rift Guardian that spawns ads or pylons. So the ultimate push, you'll want both. And you'll definitely want at least a power pylon in combination with that. Keep in mind our Enchantress does have the Nemesis Bracers effect, which will emanate. And when we click the pylon, this will give us more density for our Blood-Tide Blade to increase our DPS. Now, on the ultimate push, you'll also additionally hope that the elite pack that spawns from the pylon will have the illusionist affix, because they'll then split into multiple enemies and give you even more targets for your Blood-Tide Blade to proc. So this is the idea, is that you can have 1, maybe 2 pylons and then get an illusionist pack with a power pylon, and then hopefully on top of that have a Rift Guardian that spawns at like Hamlin or Saxtris, right? So yeah, it's definitely can be difficult with this build to kill the Rift Guardian, but once you get the right Rift Guardian, you just decimate them. You completely completely demolish them. So it definitely feels good in those situations, and it kind of makes up for the times where you happen to get an insane Rift but a bad Rift Guardian. Overall, I enjoy pushing with this build because of the Invigorating Gemstone. It's not as annoying to go through that cadence of completing the Rift just to see if you happen to get the right pylon Rift Guardian combination. Anyways, that's something to consider though if you're the type of person that doesn't like builds that have to have density on the Rift Guardian, because there are less Rift Guardians. There are more single target Rift Guardians than there are Rift Guardians that spawn ads in D3. Something to keep in mind with the Oculus Ring power, creating those rings of focus power on the ground. giving you an extra 85% multiplier, is that most of the time they will spawn in areas that are not optimal for your DPS. You have to remember with the Blood-Tide Blade, we want to have as many enemies positioned in those 25 yards. And if you're not optimally positioned, for example, if you blood rush away to stand in an oculus ring that is loses you half your density, obviously that's going to be less of an increase than the oculus ring is going to provide. So most of the time I would ignore the oculus ring. However, if you do have an oculus ring that spawns in an area and enemies are still converging on that location, it can be beneficial to teleport into the ring. Or if you get lucky enough, sometimes it's just a little force move and you're in the Ring of Power. So I want to circle back to talking about the simulacrums, why it's so important to have them, keep them alive during the Rift. You have to consider that your vitality is also increasing their health pool. Your life percent is also going to increase their health pool. We have a 2-minute cooldown here, and we don't have a lot of cooldown reduction. So as you can imagine, there are scenarios where if your simulacrums are killed by monsters, or if you die yourself, your simulacrum cooldown won't be up and ready to respawn them. And this is a big deal because if you get a God tier rift and you die right away after spawning your simulacrums, you're going to be sitting there just trying to collect mobs yourself without being able to DPS for a while consistently, because they are a large part of your DPS. One other thing that you have to consider is the Enchantress here. I'm currently running a lot of offensive affixes, and we take Final Service as a required passive here because again, we don't want to die and risk our simulacrums also dying and not being able to spawn them. So when we talk about attack speed, I've actually done a lot of breakpoint confirmation testing with the Blood Nova Iron Rose breakpoint confirmation. There's an internal cooldown in place that is preventing the Iron Rose Novas from proccing every tick of your siphoned blood. The ICD is going to be 18 frames, and at our desired breakpoint will be at 20 FPA for our Iron Rose Blood Nova procs. However, our tick rate on siphoned blood will only be about every 10 frames. So 6 ticks per second, but you only get 3 Nova procs per second. Anyways, for optimizing your attack speed, you will want to shoot for the range here, 1.66 to 1.82 attacks per second on sheet. When you equip the Swift Harvesting passive, this places your total attack speed between 1.9 and 2.09. And this will hit that breakpoint as I've recommended. But something I wanted to show you is just the weirdness of how the attack speed formula has brought about these frames that may look desirable but actually are not. Some of them may look bursty and exciting, but they're actually slower on average than the tick rate we are going for. If you have a slow weapon, you can actually drop some of your affixes and even paragon in attack speed and hit the same breakpoint that we're shooting for above, which is 20 FPA. However, after you start increasing your attack speed a little bit, the frames actually get much worse, and then they start getting better gradually until you get back up to the attack speed where we're looking at, and that's where we land. Interestingly enough, if you click a speed pylon, your attack speed drops and your frames increase to 24 FPA, which is about 20% less DPS. And so you'll have to make a decision whether you want to click a speed pylon in the Rift. They can be useful for gathering monsters. You can use them just to generate density, with the Nemesis bracers being emanated from your follower, which can be useful for a Rift Guardian fight, for example. However, they do still knock out monsters, so, you know, the CC resistance on them, you might not be able to stun them as readily with your dislocation. So these are all things you have to consider and make a decision as you're going through the Rift. Now, optimal gearing here for the this particular build, you want Swift Harvesting. My recommendation is put an attack speed affix on the weapon. One ring, preferably the Crispins. Lower Paragon, of course, you can wear the Ring of Orgrander instead, and then cube the Crispins, because it's kind of hard to get a ring like this early on. And then there's also the Enchantress is my recommended. You get 10% from Paragon as well. Very important. Let's now touch on the break even for the Guardian set. I took a snapshot at 1813 Paragon of my current int invite affixes. You can see here the increases that we achieved to both our DPS and our toughness. Quite a lot to take in, you know, 239% increase to total toughness right there. Quite nice. Here are the total differences, some differences. So when we're going to calculate, we'll use these values. There are some adjustments for gear affixes, because when you shift to the high paragon configuration with the Aughild, you're going to shed a lot of the vitality that you would have had, and maybe replace some of it with armor affixes, right? So it's definitely something to keep in mind, and we're going to add that in. So including both the offensive and defensive side. So this would be like the higher end limit of the side of the breakpoint that we're going to be calculating. We're going to include the damage reduction, the elite damage reduction, the multiplier, all of that in with our summed value, reverse multiplied, gets us a value of 5,603 stat points though. So to convert this to Paragon, divide by 5, get a value here, add that in with our snapshotted base, gives us around 2,900 Paragon to break even on the top end, which is quite high, I will admit. However, there are a lot of situations where the extra toughness here is just not valuable. The builds can already survive and clear the Rift even without this upper limit, so we're going to look into just the offensive side as well. I've taken some assumptions in this calculation, mainly like the number of gems we're going to be using for augments, how much benefit we're going to get from placing gems in our armor and pants, having to adjust the base for this, but we were able to get a value as well here, 1.3 times 1.3 for the benefit of the Aughild, so that's easy enough to calculate. But we also have to figure out how much increase we're getting from the extra int we're getting from the Guardian set. So we were able to subtract it from the base that we would have theoretically, and this comes out to about 8,467. We divide by 5 to get a Paragon value, and this means our break even is about 1,700 Paragon. However, if you include a weapon, which is highly probable you might, closer into 1830 Paragon. So definitely very notable that if you were just talking about the offensive side of this bonus, the break-even is much lower, much easier to achieve. I am super excited to run this in season. The Invigorating Gemstone, like I was saying on the stream, that's what won me over. It's like this combination is, I've always wanted it to shine, and now it does, and this is the perfect placement where you're not only taking advantage of the crowd control affix, but the healing as well, and it just feels so good to include it in a build. Not only that, but I really am looking forward to the single target focus on the Funerary Pick, bringing that back to this build, because before you were only really concerned with trash, but now it's sort of a mix. You can engage elites or trash or both together. It's really up to your choice while you're going through the Rift. And because you have to clear so many rifts to even get an attempt at killing the Rift Guardian. This makes clearing those rifts a little bit more reasonable, shall we say, to bear. Basically, you might have to make 4 or 5 attempts before you get that power pylon or the proper Rift Guardian combination. Spending that time just enjoying clearing at with crowd control immunity definitely makes a huge difference. Anyways, enjoy the Great Arch 140 Clear video to come, and links in the description. Please like and subscribe. Thank you, and see you later. That's a little better. Nothing over there. Thought there would be some elites or something. I guess we'll just kill this off. Good move. Better layout. No elites. There they are. Move. Those look like arcane mobs. Oof. Power pylon? Damn, it's big. Alright. Good level. Open map. It's like a Highlands sort of map. No witches though. One more rotation. Rotation, pull. Seveners, health link. Conduits. I think I should pull the rest of the map here. Okay, we have 2 packs here. I don't know where the yellow is. Archer. It's a 3rd. Oh my goodness, there's a 4th. We're just gonna wait till our proc comes up, and then we'll try and tap the conduit. Looks like the exit is on the top. We're going to go back to level 1. Good job. Move, move. Should be some more near the pylon. Yep. So this is both a good and a bad thing. We get ads, but our spirits are like attacking random targets now because they suck. We just need to stack Stricken a little bit. Good oculus. Okay, one more rotation. Alright, let's pull through the pylon. There we go. Great. I gotta run away real quick. Or maybe just kick the bucket and respawn. So I have area damage on the offhand here instead of additive, but we do have the passive that gives additive. And note we're running Mantle of Channeling in the cube, so Guardians gives our 2-piece, now that it's buffed, it should give a lot more tough, or it should be giving a lot more toughness now. Still subbed Vitality, even though it's not getting added in because that was so squishy. But as you can see, you get the extra multiplier, and you get to run the Stone of Jordan, which definitely helps out considerably versus elites for this particular build, so seems to be working. Not as tanky, so I would not use this for season start, but you know, 1500 Paragon definitely works very well. I think we had a minute and a half left over there. Let's check the leaderboard. Yeah, we did, look. Minute and a half. So on a better rift, we could probably clear, you know, 143, 144 Ultima, right? And then higher Paragon, you finally get Aughild, you get the extra multiplier, and then